No, I think we're.
I brought a
That one.
portable.
Okay, we are on air, so we'll go ahead and start the City Council Conference for February 11th, 2020. Mayor Clark is out of town, so I will be assuming the role of mayor this evening. So, we have one item on the agenda. It's a discussion regarding a proposal from Integrity to clean the gas produced from the digesters at the water reclamation facility. I think this is a pretty interesting and very important issue too, so please go forward.
Okay, so I'll introduce our group from Integrity and Bartlett West and Suez. But first, let me back up and remind everybody that we had a contract already with Integrity to look at the biogas from our digesters. And that was one of those, they would expense to look at the digester and to see how much gas we produce and test the gas to see if it would be acceptable to be able to clean enough to put back into a natural gas pipeline. So they would sell it, put it back into the natural gas pipeline, and give us a portion of their profits. That was for like $25,000. The neat part is they do all the work, and at the end of the contract, if it works out and it's feasible, and we tell them to go away, we're gonna bid this out, then we have to pay them $25,000. If they say it's feasible and it works, and we partner, then we don't pay them anything, and they build a facility, and we get a part of the profits. If it doesn't work, they say thanks, we say thanks, we shake hands and go away. So they did that. We already did that. Remember, we had an amendment to our contract that was up in January, I think, to look at that. So they've done the first piece of this. What they found out when they did that is that we don't produce enough gas ourselves. And so they're looking into essentially feeding our digesters something to help produce more gas so that they have a volume enough to sell to our natural gas industry. And so that's what they're here to talk and just to explain briefly about that and them, who they are, because this would be the next contract. This would be a $50,000 contract. If it works, and we tell them to go away, we owe them $50,000. If it works, and we partner with them to build it, then they build it and we get a portion of their profits. And if it doesn't work, we all shake hands and we go away. So it's really a no risk for us, but it's kind of exciting. It's kind of a lot of work to be done, and they're willing to do the work, so that's the best part. So with that, Sam Seelig is with Integrity. They're the ones that put this together. Oh, that's great.
Help you out.
Thank you. Phil Gates is with Bartlett West. He's the engineering firm that's kind of putting the pieces together to make sure that you can clean it good enough to sell it back to, and pressurize it to sell it back into the natural gas pipeline. And Dan Higgins was with Suez, who have built these processes before.
We're a manufacturer and we're in this business.
And so
Hello,
I'll
everyone.
let them tell you what this is about.
Thanks, Ken. So I'm Sam Seelig. I'm with Integrity. We are a renewable energy development company, an energy services company. We're located, our headquarters is in Little Rock, Arkansas, but our closest office to you guys is in Tulsa. I'll let Phil introduce himself.
Okay, yeah, I'm Phil Gates with Bartlett and West. I lead our biogas, renewable natural gas part of our business. My company's headquartered in Topeka. We've got 17 offices throughout the Midwest, from Bismarck, North Dakota to Fort Worth. And I'm actually located in Des Moines. So.
I'm Dan Higgins. I'm a regional manager with Suez Water and Process Solutions, and I'm here at the request of my colleagues and hope to participate in this discussion. Thank you.
So real quick, these are some of the other projects that we're working on where we're taking, landfill gas from digesters at dairies, gas from water reclamation facilities, and cleaning it. So it's something that's really starting to take off. I'll let Phil kind of briefly talk about the opportunity, then we'll get into the findings from the first phase of the study that we performed here in Norman.
Did you say dairies
Yes.
and water reclamation plants?
Yep, correct. So, so I'm just going to provide a little bit of color and background as to why this project is exciting to Integrity, Bartlett and West, and hopefully you folks as well. You know, we're basically taking an otherwise wasted product and turning it into fuel. So we're taking that organic waste at your plant, at your wastewater treatment plant. It's going through the digester. We're taking the biogas. We're going to purify that to pipeline quality, and we're going to inject it into the natural gas pipeline to be contracted for vehicle fuel. Okay. So a little bit about the program that's behind this. It's called the Renewable Fuel Standard. It's a federal program that was instituted back in 2005 and really came to fruition in 2008. And what it does is it mandates that an increasing percentage of our nation's vehicle fuel comes from renewable sources. The idea was to get away from foreign fuel and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Okay? So as you can see, through 2022, the percentage continues to increase. And there are various fuels that are incorporated in the program. Across the bottom, the dark blue, that's corn-based ethanol. Okay? The red along the top, that's advanced biofuels, and that might include soy biodiesel. Okay? And the light blue, when it comes to ethanol, is cellulosic, and that is ethanol that would be produced from the entire corn, from the entire plant, the fibrous material, rather than just the kernel of corn itself. Okay. Why it's significant to you folks, and I'm going to jump through here a little bit, is that the digestion of biosolids at your wastewater treatment plant qualifies for that light blue space that just started in 2014, and that qualifies for what we call a D3 RIN, and it represents 60% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from that of fossil fuels. Okay. When it comes to your plant, the digestion of fats, oils, and grease, or sugars, or food waste, primarily, that qualifies for a D5 RIN. Okay, so a different type of RIN, but let's talk a little bit about what a RIN actually is. This comes from the EPA website. It's their definition. It's basically a document that's produced when you produce a renewable fuel. And compliance in the program is achieved when the obligated party either blends renewable fuels into their fleet or purchases RINs to say, hey, we're doing our part to bring renewable sources to the market. Okay? So obligated parties, I should go back, are people that are blending fuels. Okay, so it's big oil, it's BP, it's Shell, and those folks, ConocoPhillips. Okay, so the flow of gas is gonna, you're taking brown gas from your digester. We're gonna purify it and compress it, and once it becomes pipeline quality, you can produce that RIN. Okay. RINs are then, the gas and those RINs are traded to an energy service provider or a third party who takes possession of the physical gas and those certificates. They're going to sell the gas to end use, and the end user is going to dispense it as compressed natural gas or liquefied natural gas. The RINs are then sold to the obligated parties, and they're going to provide that revenue back to the producer. In this case, it's going to be Integrity. The reason a lot of these projects are being funded by third parties is because there are risks associated with the program. As you can see, right now, if you go back to that original chart, the program expires in 2022, supposedly. There's legislation being drafted that would extend the program, but right now we don't know what the sunset looks like. The law states that the mandate is never to be lower than what it was in 2022 going forward. But who knows? We're hoping that it will increase, but that's one of those risks that they're willing to take on. Okay. RINs are traded in a volatile market. 2 years ago, a D3 RIN was worth $2.35. In July of last year, they were worth 45 cents. Now they've gotten back up to about $1.30. So,
Member Wilson?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
And you may be going to cover this, so if it's
Sure.
further down in the presentation, but I don't want to go past this slide and forget my question. I'd already written down what's the market like, and then what's the city's risk if, does the Ingenuity absorb any problems with the market that might happen in the future?
So the contract to you guys typically is it's a fixed payment of $25,000 or so, and then we're going to share 10% of the revenue that we get from selling the RINs with the city, at least 10%.
So we pay you 25,000.
No,
You
no.
pay us 25,000
We pay you $25,000 a year,
a year.
and then also 10% of the revenue. So really, the risk is if the market goes bad, that 10% is just not going to look very good. But we're on the hook,
Cool. All right.
for the rest of it. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's also some state programs that are available for this type of gas. California and Oregon have programs that are already in place. Washington has legislation. It hasn't been passed yet, but they're trying really hard to get something started up that way as well. There has been a consortium of states up in in the Northeast. We're also hearing now Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin are trying to put together a regional low carbon fuel standard. So there are definitely state programs that I think are going to be coming forward in the future. The reason state programs are interesting is because if you inject gas basically anywhere in the country, it can be contracted as for end use anywhere. This is just a depiction of the interstate pipeline system.
I have another question
Sure.
about this pipeline
Sure.
system. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool. So, are you saying then that it just goes into the mix of the whole pipeline, and
That's right.
really cool. I like
That's
it.
right.
I don't know why I just
So-
wanted to say it was cool, but
So essentially, we could put gas
I
on
just
the
want to get that on the
pipeline.
record. That I think that's cool.
Yeah, we could put it on the pipeline here and sell it in California, and you would get RIN credits and LCFS credits.
I love it. Let's sign up. Let's do it.
Presentation over.
Shut the computer.
That's-
Yeah, but I mean, what else is there to say?
Who's gonna sell her a car next?
I'm easy today.
She's buying today.
It's a lot of flammable material running under
All of our
entire
I know,
country, or
right?
the entire state of Oklahoma.
That's right.
Councilmember Patron.
So, just to compare with exploration on natural gas, fossil fuel style, versus capturing it and what we're talking about here, can you kind of give us an idea as to, I'm assuming this is much more cost effective because it's there, for one.
That's
but,
right.
You're not having to go lease from all these different landowners and mineral rights owners and all this. Am I right to,
That's right.
to assume that? Like, so is this kind of the future as to how, and is anybody else in Oklahoma, any other municipalities doing this?
So that's really kind of the barrier to entry is just the size of the town. And you guys already have anaerobic digesters, so that's huge. But if you don't have a wastewater plant that's large enough to where it'll produce enough gas, then there's just no return on investment.
The economy of scale.
That's right. That's right. So there's very few towns, in our area where it's big enough to make it work.
Oklahoma's got some hog farms that are getting pretty advanced in terms of going forward with anaerobic digestion projects to produce gas into the pipeline.
So, a follow-up if I may. What are you seeing as like the threshold on population to where it does become more economically feasible over fracked gas?
Well, that's what we can talk about that. But I mean, as a percentage of gas potential, I would bet it's less than 5% of total natural gas consumption that you could
Oh,
get from
right now, I
yeah,
mean,
biological.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
it's
just
just a drop
wondered-
in the bucket. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
When
sure.
you talked about the size of a city, what you're seeing as the minimum population, would be to where this is, and I understand that you're gonna be feeding it because we actually don't
If-
produce enough, but
So if it was just municipal biosolids, so just the sludge coming out of your wastewater, generally speaking, you're probably talking about a city that's about 100,000 people, okay? And in this case, we investigated it. Looks like it's a little bit too small to do just on municipal biosolids, so that's why now we're looking at how do we enhance it?
feeding it, yeah.
Right. And so historically speaking, you've been burning that gas to generate electricity, or it just gets flared, right? So it's a wasted resource. When you're generating electricity, right now you're offsetting fairly cheap electricity, 4 or 5 cents, so it's not going to waste, but this is definitely going to generate some more revenue that way.
Councilmember Wilson.
Full of questions. Is there an application where landfills could?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. In
have
fact,
a follow-up
I'm
question
interviewing.
for that.
I'm interviewing
I
at a
love it again.
for a landfill project on Friday
Okay.
in
and then
Chicago.
I have another question. I'll go ahead and ask it now. It doesn't relate to any of that, but will you guys have employees or an office here, if you were to? Okay.
Yes. We'll have to operate the food waste depackaging equipment.
Thank you. And okay,
Landfill-
one more
our
question
landfill
about.
closed in the 80s, so I don't think it would have anything. But
Well, we don't have a landfill, but there are plenty of them around.
yes, please go ahead.
How many employees would you possibly have on?
It depends on the scale of the project, and I would also assume that it depends a little bit about regarding the contract with the city, who's
Okay.
responsible for
what?
what.
Okay, it's kind of
that sort
details
thing.
stuff
Yeah,
later.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Cool. I wasn't sure if it was like a thing that you set up and then just go to another state and
No, it has to be
has to be
managed.
managed. Okay.
Okay, so we'll talk about the findings from our study that we just worked through. So this is your water reclamation facility. And originally we were talking about trying to put a project back here. Ken has said that land is going to be used for other things. So we know that we're hoping that this land would be available. Your digesters are right here, so it wouldn't be a problem just to take it across the road. So as Ken kind of talked about earlier, we started this thing back in the beginning of 2019, and as we gathered data throughout the year, we just kept finding that y'all weren't producing as much gas as we thought. And Steve had his crew out there,
Have you been to city council meetings?
and that's what. So,
A lot of hot
A
air.
lot of hot air.
Definitely volatile.
so Steve went through there. They calibrated everything, and we just couldn't find enough gas. So the agreement that you agreed to last year said, okay, we're going to convert all the biogas to RNG and sell it. That wasn't a problem. We're going to pay you guys at least 10% of the revenue. That wasn't an issue. We were going to fund it 100%, but really the problem, with this new proposal is it has a big impact on the operations of the wastewater plant, because we're going to be sending food waste to the plant. And so we said, well, we got with the staff and we said, look, this is a big change. We didn't hold up our end of the deal. We can't get a project done without adding food waste. So from that standpoint, we don't feel like we've met our agreement. You don't owe us anything. We said we would like to propose adding food waste. And so this is kind of what we found. We thought your gas flow was going to be, this yellow line, which was just marginal for a project. Y'all are just kind of on the lower level of population size. When we got in there and dug into the data, we found that it was about 15-25% of what we were expecting. But the good news is you have a bunch of excess capacity in your existing digesters. So we can add food waste without increasing any kind of cost, doing a bunch of upgrades for the city. And if we did that, we'd be, making double what we thought would be reasonable. Make it
Councilmember
go.
Wilson?
I have a
Yes.
food waste question.
Sure.
Where would that come from? Local places?
That was gonna be my question.
Yep. So
Oh,
that
you beat me to it.
that is going to be the next phase. We're going to have to do a study. We're going to look for food waste, septage, fats, oils, greases, anything we can find to feed it.
How about dog poop?
Dog poop? I mean, conceively, yeah.
Yeah.
I know a place.
We know a couple.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't know
It'd
the
have to be
inside joke,
all-
but we own an indoor doggy daycares. But then I was going to ask, follow up, what would be the cost? Would there be any cost to them, or would that help them in their bottom line?
So we would look at the market, see how much they're currently costs them to, dispose of their food waste, and we would just try and make it advantageous for them to bring it to us. So there will be a cost, but it should be less. I mean, we've got to get their business,
And Your Honor, on that food waste note, there was a study done, there's a couple of universities that have projects where they're gathering up all their food waste and digesting it for this same purpose. And it's making sense to do that on a university scale, and I think our university is bigger than a couple of those projects currently out there,
I would
so
say university and our public schools.
definitely a good
Yeah.
source.
Okay.
Councilmember Bierman?
Well, I was just going to say, speaking more generally, as discussion about our changing recycling program has continued to happen, there's been a lot of talk. I've been a part of that talk. I've generated some of that talk about food composting. We have a compost facility that is mostly for lawn waste. We don't have any kind of institutional program for food waste collection, and I do believe that a city like Norman is far more predisposed to something like that than the majority of other cities in Oklahoma. So
Right.
I definitely think there could be a possibility there, even if it's just giving the educational material for someone on how to collect it themselves and bring it. I think that Ken knows their composting facility for lawn waste is hopping all the time, and I have no doubt that the same would be for food composting as well, as long as we tell people what to do and how to do it.
Councilmember Scanlon?
Does this impact at all the drink your wastewater project?
What? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
What impact, if any, does this have on the drink your wastewater project?
Oh, this would have nothing on our reuse project. This is, it
This
was.
is all at the front end.
No, actually, this is at the tail end. This is not doing anything with the water side of it. This is doing with our biosolids that we have right now. So that was one of the things that Sam talked about. The reason we have extra capacity is our water reclamation facility. We built it, so it's 17 million gallons a day. We're using about 11 million gallons, so we have extra capacity. But we didn't want them to use up our citizens' extra capacity. But they said, I'll talk for you.
Yep,
You can tell me
yep,
if I'm
go
wrong.
ahead.
They said, well, that actually, municipal waste carries better gas than just food waste. And so as we would grow as a community, they would reduce the amount of food waste they would add to the digester. So we would still have a full digester, starts out with food waste, and as we grow as a community, we would just lessen the amount of food waste going to it.
Right. So, food waste that we add to a digester, when we sell that gas, we get D5 RINs. And you see they're trading at 43 cents. Anything that comes from the wastewater plant is a D3, and it's trading at $1.60. So it's in everybody's best interest that it put as much, wastewater solids in there as possible.
Councilmember Wilson?
Where does animal waste fall in that? I'm
She
still-
really
I
wants to
mean-
give you all of our dog poop.
It'd be D3.
Yep.
Bring on the dog poop.
We got you covered.
So Dan,
You put me a dumpster out there and you got it, buddy.
I believe that this slide
I didn't
is
think you
from
gave up.
the Wasatch Resource
Today I did.
Recovery Facility,
And
which
for
is in
free.
Bountiful, Utah, which is kind of a suburb to Salt Lake City. And, you know, to simplify this, I don't know how many of you saw Dan Aykroyd do the Fish-O-Matic thing during Saturday Night Live a few decades ago, but that's essentially what we're doing, is we're putting a lot of food waste and we're running it through a super blender and we're following that with a screen to make sure that we catch all the plastics and everything. This literally depackages expired food. Now, I'll admit to you, you know, when I grew up, all the milk came in these kind of waxed cardboard cartons and everything, and we've kind of gotten away from that. We're more into plastic and glass and so on and so forth. We struggle with that waxed up cardboard, but that's a minimal amount of the waste that we get there in Bountiful. But the interesting thing about Bountiful and this food waste setup that turns everything into a slurry so we can jam it into the digester and make some gas. The interesting thing about Bountiful is that's the first food waste processing facility on that western part of the Wasatch Range where all of Salt Lake City, Ogden, all of that is. So even if the municipalities that are in that area aren't bringing their waste to this facility, the food producers have always struggled with where they were going to, you know, who they were going to pay to haul what to the landfill and what was the tipping charge going to be and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of companies that like that ability to say in their advertising, you know, we're a sustainable company because we're sending our junk to the recycling center and so on and so forth. So this is growing in demand, and my dream for you would be if you went this route, I think you'd be surprised over time as to the food waste that you might be bringing in from Moore and Oklahoma City and other surrounding areas.
Use all the wasted expired food in all these grocery stores. I think that's pretty good.
So let's see.
Think City
We'll
Manager had
find
a
out
comment.
if I'm smart enough to advance or go backwards. So
think
there's
we have
our.
I think they have.
One
we have
quick
a
question.
question. Sure.
So,
Sure.
and I think that ideology of balancing, if a company shows up out at Saxon Industrial Park and they make cheese and their waste product adds BODs and suspended solids to our digester process, because one, growth in population, but two, a growth in the strength of our waste stream is also a capacity issue, just how much the bugs can eat. So you'll
The
balance
more
not just growth,
volatile solids, biodegradable volatile solids, the more COD, chemical oxygen demand, that waste presents to the wastewater treatment plant. There's a mathematical formula that lets you transfer that into gas production.
Perfect, that's all I needed to know.
I do have
Councilmember
one
Bierman?
Yeah.
question. Do you do any of the vertical integration for like the collection of the waste and bringing it to your facility, or is that something you would
We've
hope to
not
pop up
ventured into
privately?
the collection aspect. We typically have partnered. That'll be Sam's call, but I would guess he would partner with the collection people like Waste Management or Waste One or.
Do they typically seem to be willing to do that or integrate that into their business model?
if it costs them less, you know, as long as we're their least expensive option, you know, they're going to want to bring it here.
Thanks.
Councilmember Patron?
After it's all said and done, and what the waste that's at the end, I mean, I don't have the right language for this, but I'm comparing it to and it's probably in your portfolio, so don't take this personally, but I'm comparing it to fracked gas and wastewater. So is there something at the end that is toxic that we will then have to deal with?
So you will have it will increase the amount of solids, you know, because we're going to be adding a lot more to your digester, so you're going to have a lot more solids coming out. And that's something that Ken and I have talked about. Y'all have already contracted most of the ground to land apply all this, so that's just something we'll have to study to find out what to do with all the
It is an
additional
inert
solids.
Let me
product,
back-
though.
That's
I'm
right.
sorry?
It is
Yes.
an inert
That's
product
right. It
at
is
the
an
end of the
inert problem.
process.
It's nothing toxic, heavy metals, anything like that.
What you don't see on this is, well, what you do see is you see a building that encloses this, and you see a concrete slab, and if you look over, is there a pointer? Yeah. See that wall, that short wall there that goes all the way around the perimeter of the building? Basically, you bring your truck in, you dump it on the floor, and you use a front end loader and you spread it out. So you're looking for the engine blocks, and there's an inspection of every delivered load. And if it's not food waste, if somebody's decided to throw some paint cans or something else in, it gets loaded back up on that truck and he hauls it wherever he wants to, but it's not going to meet your ordinance that we're going to help you with that's going to define what's an acceptable food waste. These are going to be contracted haulers, and they're going to say, this is what we're going to bring you. Okay? That food waste cannot contain any human waste. Okay?
Yeah, that's on the
Interestingly
front end.
enough, it can include animal waste.
It can.
I know, it's odd, but it
Not
can.
human, but
Would you mind
that's weird.
just giving us a brief update on how do we currently handle solid waste at the end of the process currently that we have? Where does it go?
Digested solids.
And
Sure,
all
and
that
that's one of the things that Sam just talked about briefly, is that we're concerned, because right now, not everything that comes into a water reclamation facility is liquid. And so we end up with a biosolids that we take and we can dry it and take it to a landfill and pay to get rid of it, or we can take it to a field, and that's what we're doing now, as long as it's not really, really wet and rainy and stuff like that. But we take it and we spread it on a field. But it's not 100% simple. You have to do soils tests on the field first, and then you spread your biosolids on it, and then you have the farmer has to plant stuff that uses up the nutrients you're putting in the soil to make sure you don't overburn the soil or anything like that. So it's a balancing act. You have to essentially you're putting fertilizer on the soil. Whatever he grows has to use up whatever you put on there. And then he also, everybody knows Steve Hardiman, he's our water reclamation manager. He has to do also heavy metals on that same soil to make sure that we don't have an abundance of heavy metals, or we don't put something on the soil that's not good. So we're going to be adding solids. So I talked to Sam, and that might be part of this contract when it all works out, is if we have to get a different field or an additional field to put more solids. That would be part of the issue that we have to work out of where we're going to put these. The easiest scenario would be just pay like we're doing now and take it to the landfill. It's just like dirt. If you've seen what comes out of our centrifuges, it looks coffee grounds, looks like dirt, coffee grounds, something like that. We can just take it to a landfill, pay $20 a ton to get rid of it.
Thank you, Ken. Councilmember Wilson?
You guys might have said this earlier and I didn't catch it, but how much additional biosolids are you gonna need? What's the,
It's about 100,000 tons per year is the maximum capacity that your digesters could hold, and we just have to find out how much is available. But
that's additional or total?
that's additional. Yep.
On
But
top of what we already produce?
that's right. Yeah, I mean, ideally, we'd be able to find fields to land apply to use it as fertilizer. We don't want to bring it to the landfill.
Cool. I was just trying to figure out if doggy daycare had enough.
And really, I think these are just some of the other projects that we've worked on. Some photos, and then if you wanted to see what an upgrading facility looks like, this is from Bartlett and West. I don't know, Phil, if you want to.
Yeah, I can narrate a little bit. This is a project up in Sioux City, Iowa. Sioux City is not a real big city, but it does have a really high percentage or high concentration of food producers in the city. It's kind of a food manufacturing mecca. And so we're taking gas from their wastewater treatment plant, anaerobic digesters, and purifying it and injecting it into the Mid-American Energy pipeline system there. This first part that you're seeing is taking out moisture and hydrogen sulfide out of the gas. There are impurities in raw biogas that have to be taken out. This This main part here is to take out the carbon dioxide. Biogas is probably about 35% carbon dioxide, and so that's the major component that needs to be taken out. That system that you saw is a membrane system, and it's very modular and can grow with the size of the program that potentially would happen here.
What happens,
Councilman Wilson.
what happens to the CO2? Or the,
Yeah.
the carbon dioxide whenever?
So in their case, we're actually going to use the CO2 to do some chemical addition in their wastewater treatment plant process to drive pH so that they can reduce the amount of chlorine that's needed to disinfect on the way out of the plant. So it's going to reduce their costs in that way too.
There's a growing market for using liquefied carbon dioxide in the frack business. Use it as a fracking carrier of the sand that keeps the frack crevices open and everything, and you're putting it down so far in the ground that they consider that a permanent sequestration of the carbon.
Okay.
Councilman Bierman.
What safety risks are associated with facilities like these, and what mechanisms do you put in place to mitigate them?
Yeah, great question. There are definitely physical safety measures that are going to be put in place with the gas collection and that sort of thing coming out of the digesters. You already have much of that equipment in place today. We would have to look at the sizing of that equipment to make sure that whatever increases of biogas that are brought about are accommodated. It's not likely because I think this is probably going to be small enough, but it could come under OSHA regulations because of the amount of fuel that would be produced on site. It's something that we'll have to study and help Sam determine, those requirements. But it's going to be natural gas on site. It's something that you probably are using today. I'm guessing you bring natural gas into the plant. So they're somewhat accustomed to that equipment already. This purification system will be owned and operated by them, and so those people will be qualified to be able to handle that equipment.
Follow up. I just don't know you.
Yeah.
So, my concern is just being so closely located to kind of one of our city's assets, and then just to the north of that is our animal shelter. Just to the east of that is a neighborhood. So, just making sure I don't know anything about this process other than what I've heard tonight. So, I just want to be sure that we are considering and ensuring as many safety precautions as we can, just because there's not real great access otherwise out of Jenkins. So, just making sure we've got a lot of city assets in this area, a lot of human assets over on the east in the neighborhood, and so just making sure that this facility and what you do there is done in as safe a manner as possible is something that I just wanted to be sure to mention.
Ken, would we be looking to construct, they mentioned 2 potential locations around the plant. Is that on spots that we already own?
Yes and no. The one spot we own that's adjacent to, if you can back up. Can you
Yeah,
hit
let's
that one?
see.
Way back at it, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So here's our water reclamation facility. Here's the old compost facility, and this is a new area. We'll have a container maintenance facility for our dumpsters and to clean out polycarts, things like that. The city does own, as Sam said, about this much. This is a lot lower in elevation here, and this is pieces that Oliver's Woods, the university's been studying this. And a number of years ago, I was going to claim this because it's the city's land, and the university threw a pretty big fit because it's part of what they consider their research area. So that would be a little bit of a struggle to get the university to say, oh yeah, sure, put a big facility here. They might not, maybe they've changed. But Avera has their plant, it's located here, and if you remember, recently, they've put about this much of it up for sale over here, and the same amount on the other side. So while the Highway 9 piece would have nice access, off of Jenkins, and it'd be a valuable thing, this piece would probably have less value to them, but also because this is our big interceptor line. This is how we feed our plant with all the wastewater from Norman. It comes down here, you can kind of see it, and it feeds right into here. So again, it's something that this is all exploratory stuff.
Right.
And that's the good news, bad news. If it works out, we can partner with them and help make money. If it doesn't work out, they just said didn't work out.
So if we did it on the east side of Jenkins there, our transportation long-range plan does call for Cedar Lane eventually connecting to Jenkins right there.
And this is Cedar Lane.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
Eventually connecting right there, yeah. So as long as it doesn't interfere with that, I would think that would be a better location. I know that we own the property up there, and I would think that in the end it doesn't really matter if OU doesn't like it or not. We own the property, we can do what we want with it. But it is a nature preserve, that really large chunk, and there are lots of trees right there on our piece, so it'd be nice not to disturb that if possible. But it sounds like we would have to purchase land if we're going to do it over there off Jenkins.
And that would be, we could
Right.
work out whether we purchase it,
Okay.
their building would be on that property.
So it wouldn't even be a city building necessarily?
right.
It'd be your building.
That's
and
right.
it would
And
be-
operate.
That's right.
I see.
And I mean, if you just, these are the digesters, so it's a much shorter run to get here than it is to try and weave through all the process and get up there.
Do you auger the slurry under the road in a pipe? Is that how we would move the mix to the digester?
That's right. I don't know, Dan, if you want to get
Well,
in there.
We had a shot of that slurry, which isn't very attractive, but basically you'd pump it over to your digester.
Yeah.
There, digester feed slurry.
It's not.
How attractive is that?
It's just
That's right.
peanut butter.
That's right.
Just peanut butter.
So really, that's it. Really, the next steps. If obviously there's no action or anything tonight, but just something to keep in mind is it would be an amended project development agreement, and then we would take off. We would perform the study, perform the financial analysis, and then hopefully we could get that land under option and take off running.
Okay, are there any further questions from council about this? Sure, it'll be coming back.
We'll bring you back an action item on the council then.
Well, I think it's very exciting renewing or reusing waste products that we're generating here in our community and maybe in the communities around us. I think it's a pretty good thing for us overall. So looking forward to learning more about it. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion, second, done.